On Christmas Eve, the world outside my window glowed with warm lights, snow, dusted rooftops, and families moving like shadows behind curtains, gathering together, laughing, exchanging gifts, sharing love. But inside my home, inside the place that was supposed to be my sanctuary, a coldness seeped into my bones, a coldness far worse than the winter wind. I had returned from university that morning, suitcase in one hand, a small gift bag for my parents in the other, excited in a way I hadn't felt for years, because Christmas in our family had always been complicated, but I still held on to the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, things would be different this time. Instead, I stepped through the front door and into betrayal so sharp it hollowed me out. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, as if someone had tried to create the illusion of holiday warmth. But the first thing I noticed was a pair of unfamiliar shoes near the entryway. And then the sound of someone humming in the hallway, someone who wasn't family. I followed the sound, confused, until I reached my bedroom door. Except it wasn't my bedroom door anymore. A shiny brass plaque had been screwed into the wood, reading "Guest Suite," and beneath it hung a small wreath decorated with golden bells. My heart pounded as I pushed it open, and my breath caught in my throat. Everything was different. My posters were gone, my bookshelves stripped bare, my desk replaced with a white vanity set, and the walls repainted a beige so lifeless it made my stomach twist. Standing in the middle of the room, casually unpacking a box of expensive perfumes, was my cousin Leela, the golden child of the extended family. The one my parents always compared me to. The one who deserved everything because she worked harder, looked better, behaved better. Even though she had done nothing in her life except manipulate people with a smile, Leela turned toward me with the kind of grin that made me feel small and unwanted. "Oh, you're here," she said, as if I were the guest and she were the rightful owner of the house. "Your parents said you wouldn't mind sharing for just a few days." "Well, actually, not sharing. This is my room now. My room, my space, my childhood memories, my entire identity." Something snapped inside me, a thin inner thread stretching until it burned, because that room had been my refuge from the constant criticism, the endless comparisons, the emotional distance that had simmered in my home for years. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, stepping forward in disbelief. "This is my room. I grew up here." Leela rolled her eyes. "They sold it to me," she replied with a shrug. "Paid for it and everything. Isn't that crazy? I mean, who sells a room? But your parents said this house needs investment and you're barely here, because you're always off at university, doing whatever you do. They said you wouldn't care." My chest burned. My parents sold my room, sold it like it was a storage shed or a piece of furniture. Sold the space that held my diaries, my secrets, my memories. I felt dizzy and rushed to the wardrobe, ripping it open to see if my things were still there, but the shelves were empty, the hangers gone, my belongings vanished. "Where are my things?" I demanded. Leela shrugged again, that infuriating smirk never leaving her face. "Your mom boxed them up and put them in the garage. I think she planned to donate some, not sure. She told me not to touch anything sentimental, though. Well, except the stuff that didn't match the aesthetic." My heart sank even deeper. My things didn't match her aesthetic. My life didn't match the image my parents wanted to project. And now, on Christmas Eve, after months away, after surviving exams, stress, loneliness, and nights of crying into my pillow, hoping for a place that felt like home, I was being erased. I stormed downstairs, anger vibrating through my veins, and found my parents in the living room. They sat near the fire, sipping hot cocoa like everything was normal, like they hadn't just committed an emotional crime. "You sold my room?" I asked, my voice shaking. My father didn't look up. My mother sighed dramatically. "Sweetheart, don't be childish. You're 20, not 10. You don't live here full-time anymore. Why keep a room empty when your cousin needed a place for the holidays? Needed a place, you sold my room. You didn't rent it. You didn't ask me, you sold it. It was a symbolic sale." My mother snapped, She paid a token amount because she insisted on contributing to the house. It's good for us. We need the money. I had heard that argument 100 times, but it never added up. My parents lived comfortably. They traveled, they bought expensive decor. They hosted lavish family dinners. They didn't need money, they needed control. So you chose her over me. I whispered. My mother rolled her eyes again. Something she'd perfected over years of disappointment with me. This negativity is exactly why we did it. You're always dramatic, always overreacting. Why can't you be more like Leela? She appreciates things. She brings harmony to the family. Harmony. The word felt poisonous. My father finally set his mug down and added, "You're almost an adult now. You should be focused on independence, not clinging to childhood rooms. It's time to grow up. Grow up." That phrase echoed through me because growing up, in their language, meant surrendering every piece of myself that made me different from what they wanted. And you didn't even bother to tell me. We didn't think you'd mind. My mother replied coldly, "You barely come home." I wanted to scream that the reason I barely came home was because of how they treated me, but the words stuck in my throat the way they always did. They had a way of making me doubt myself, making me feel guilty for wanting love, for wanting space, for wanting to belong. Then my mother added a final blow. "Besides, your grandmother would have agreed with our decision." Little did they know, Grandma had left behind a will none of us had ever seen, a will that would be read the next morning, Christmas Day, and that will would reveal everything. It would expose the truth they had buried for years. It would tear open the lies they lived behind, and it would show me that my room was only the beginning of what they had stolen. I barely slept that night, curled up on the couch because my cousin had already moved into my room, as if she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Her expensive perfume drifting down the hallway like a taunt every time the air shifted. The Christmas lights outside flickered against the windows, reflecting across the living room walls, but they brought no comfort. Instead, they reminded me of how many holidays I had spent sitting quietly in this very room, watching other families exchange affection while mine treated me like an inconvenience. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Leela standing in my space, rearranging her things on my shelves as if she were erasing me one item at a time. My mother had handed me an old blanket, as if she were granting me a favor instead of displacing me from the place that had shaped my childhood. I lay awake thinking, how could they do this? Was I really so worthless to them? How long had they planned this without telling me? But beneath the pain was something bigger, heavier, the strange tension they had each time Grandma was mentioned. For months before she passed, they had acted nervous whenever she asked to see me, and on the day she died, they didn't even let me go to the hospital until the very end. They said it was too emotional for me, but deep down, even then, I had felt something else brewing, something hidden, and now with the will reading scheduled for the morning, my parents seemed unusually calm, too calm, like people who thought they had already won. Morning came with a knock at the door so loud it pulled me out of the half-sleep I had drifted into sometime before dawn. My mother walked into the living room dressed elegantly despite it being early, her hair perfectly styled, makeup immaculate. She didn't look at me as she said, "Get up, we're leaving in 30 minutes, dress decently. The lawyer's firm is very professional." I had to bite my tongue to keep from asking her where my clothes were, considering everything of mine was boxed in the garage. But I swallowed the anger and went to find something remotely wearable in one of those cold cardboard boxes. My father was already in the car when I stepped outside, engine running, tapping his fingers impatiently against the steering wheel. Leela opened the front door at the same time, stepping out in a fur-lined coat like she was attending a royal event rather than a will reading. She gave me a smug smile as she slipped into the back seat beside me, and the scent of her perfume filled the entire car again. The drive was silent except for the faint hum of holiday radio music and the occasional whisper between my parents about procedures and formalities. As if they were memorizing lines for a performance they were certain would end in applause. But something inside me, call it intuition, call it years of silently observing the cracks in my family, told me that today would not go the way they believed. Grandma had always been different, one of the only people who saw me without comparing me to someone else. When I was younger, she used to hold my hands and say, "You shine in ways they don't bother to understand." Those words became my lifeline in a house that constantly criticized me for not being enough. And when she got sick, something changed. She became guarded around my parents, asking me questions privately, telling me things in fragments, like she was preparing me for something bigger. When we arrived at the law office, my parents straightened their posture. Leela adjusted her hair, and I followed them inside, heart pounding like a drum. The lobby was warm, filled with poinsettias and garlands, which contrasted with the tension thickening in my chest. The receptionist led us to a conference room where Mr. Holly's, Grandma's longtime attorney, sat waiting with a stack of documents neatly arranged in front of him. When he saw me, he gave a small nod, an expression of recognition that felt strangely reassuring. My parents, however, exchanged a quick glance, a nervous one, a telling one. Mr. Holly's cleared his throat and began speaking in a calm, steady voice. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, today we are reading the last will and testament of Eleanor Brooks." My grandmother's name hit the air like a soft echo, and for a moment I thought I felt her presence, gentle but firm, like she was standing right behind me with her hand on my shoulder. Mr. Holly's continued, explaining the formalities, the witnesses, the legality of the document. My mother's leg bounced anxiously. My father kept adjusting his tie. Finally, the lawyer picked up the first page and began reading. "I, Eleanor Brooks, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare this my final will. First, to my daughter and son-in-law." My parents leaned forward, holding their breath. I leave the sum of $100 each. The silence that followed was so sharp it could have shattered glass. My mother blinked. My father's jaw dropped. Leela's mouth fell open in shock. $100, not thousands, not the house, not the savings, not the investments. $100. This must be a mistake. My father sputtered. "We took care of her." My mother cut in, voice rising. "We paid for Mr. Holly's raised a hand calmly. Mrs. Brooks made these decisions very consciously. She wrote detailed explanations, which I will read shortly. My heart pulsed with an emotion I couldn't describe. Relief, fear, disbelief, hope, all swirling into something that felt like justice slowly cracking open. Mr. Holly's continued reading. To my granddaughter Leela. Leela lifted her head, confidence returning. I leave my jewelry collection that she has always admired. Leela exhaled dramatically in relief, pressing a hand to her chest, until the lawyer added, "With the exception of the sapphire necklace, which she attempted to take from me without permission." Leela's face turned red, then purple. My parents turned toward her, horrified, and then everything changed, because the next lines were about me, and they would tear open every lie my parents had built.